Hello everyone, today we're going to go over the Junior Design Rulebook. I will just briefly go over exactly what it is you will need to know for just the whole weekend, your whole Saturday, Sunday for Junior Design. So the first thing we'll do is go to the website. You should all know this because you've all signed up. ascentsoc.com/YEC. This is our YEC page. Now, I'm sure you've done at least one member in your team has done this whole process. You've all bought your tickets or did the survey, so that's fine. And then we head down to Junior Design. This used to say under construction, and now it's finally done. So if we click on that, well, I had the link open, but all right. If we click on that, you'll head over to the rulebook. The first thing you'll notice is that it's adapted for the online format. Junior Design is actually a competition that is based on building a physical prototype of something. But obviously, we can't do that online. If we did try to do it, we would have to like mail kits to all your teams, but then again, your teams are not in the same location. So that whole idea doesn't seem to work out. What we're going to do is instead of you creating a physical thing, you'll now do a virtual thing. So it'll be like 3D modeling of sorts. All right, but I'll get to that later. If you have any questions or concerns, you can just email me here. The table of contents, every single rulebook, if you participated in any of the other competitions as well in the previous weekends, you'll notice that every single rulebook has the exact same format. There's the exact same 5 sections, and the information in each section is exactly where you expect it to be. So you should just have an easy time navigating through all this. All right. Section 1.0. The goal of the Junior Design Competition is to address students to design, build a prototype to address a technical problem. Usually, the technical problem is very specific, very concise. So in the previous year, there was one to design a catapult, and they would have fixed amounts of materials, and you would have to take that material. You would be given a budget, and then you would also have things like a weight constraint, and you apply all those. You take all those constraints and all the materials you get to create a solution, which probably was something like a would make a catapult that can throw this marble the farthest, something like that. So this year, it won't be that strict. It'll be more of an open-ended problem, and it will be up to you to kind of define the problem and define the solution for it. I'll get to that later if you don't understand exactly what I mean. In this competition, normally in person there would be 2 different aspects. One would be you would have one presentation where you demo the prototype, you would demo your design in doing something, and the second presentation would just be just like a regular presentation where you explain the concept of your design, you explain how your team worked together on it, that whole thing. So that there's 2 components. But this year, that the physical design and testing component can't happen. So that will be integrated with the presentation. And in the presentation, you're expected to just show pictures or use a 3D modeling software to show your theoretical design. All right, team composition, you need 3 or 4 members, nothing more, nothing less. You all know that. Section 2.0 resources. All right, so the presentations will be done on Zoom. You're not going to record your presentation or send it earlier. It will all be done on Zoom. One of your members will share their screen. In the rulebook, I have that competitors are expected to present via their own computer setup. So we're not responsible for any hardware, software issues you're going to have. Okay, competitors are permitted to use the internet. You can use the internet. You can use any resource to cite it. 3D software. What software to use is up to you. Some common ones are SketchUp, Tinkercad, AutoCAD, and SolidWorks. You can also handwrite. You can also make it with something you have at home, but we won't prefer one style over the other. It's just the style that conveys the most information is most valuable to us. So physical design will probably be the best because you can actually show it work, but it's also difficult and time consuming to do with stuff you have at home. Another thing is what one of our organizers has done is created a SketchUp, a Google SketchUp tutorial of sorts. It's also in this channel, so just click on, after this video, click on the channel and look up that video. It will contain basic instructions on how to get started with SketchUp. It's a 5-minute long video approximately, and it contains all the basics of what you need in order to create a decent model for tomorrow. So I suggest you and your team members get used to SketchUp today, and then tomorrow you can actually use it to make whatever design you decide to make. It's not too important. Okay, submissions. This is the meat of what you want to know. Your team needs to submit 2 things before the end of the deadline on Saturday. So the problem is going to be released at 12 p.m. and the deadline to submit is at 6 p.m., meaning your team has 6 hours to work on a solution. 2 things that they need to submit. You have to go to this form and do the submission there, but the 2 things you need to submit are a proposal and a presentation. The proposal is just a basic 2 paragraphs on what your whole design is about, right? Do you want the judges to just look at it for a minute and be like, oh, okay, so this is what they're going to present about, and then you do your presentation. The presentation itself will contain everything that you will present the next day. So if you decide to present your design and you want to present it in, like you're sharing your screen, right? And you want to present it in AutoCAD, you want to present it in Google SketchUp, because you have the advantage of rotating, zooming, moving in, out, things like that. If you want to do that, then you will have to send pictures. You will have to include pictures of that design in your presentation, because we need to know that you haven't worked on it past 6 p.m. Your team only has 6 hours. Any additional work beyond that is a massive penalty to your score. All right? Yeah, you may not edit your presentation or proposal after submitting it. Ideally, you would send a PDF, but if you send a PowerPoint that's Google Slides, that's fine, but the timestamp cannot be anything beyond 6 p.m. All right, next, technical details, timekeeping, not too important. Plagiarism, quite important. It's obvious, so I won't even go over it. Don't do stuff that'll get you eliminated. 3.0 is the timeline. So this section of the rulebook is basically just a brief overview of the whole competition. Phase 1 is basically your application submission. So your team signed up for this competition by this date, November 5th at midnight. Then the competition briefing, which is going to happen tomorrow at 11 a.m., where all the teams come and I do attendance and I confirm and I answer questions, and then I release a problem statement at the end. Development phase, this is your 12 noon till 6 p.m. time, where you have 6 hours to work with your team to design something that will be presented the next day. And you also have to submit within those 6 hours. The next day, judging period, that's phase 4. You will have 8 minutes to do your solution, to do your presentation. And then after that, we'll have a maximum of 5 minutes to ask questions. It could be less, could be slightly more. We could give the judges a bit more leeway, but ideally we will try to complete your presentation. You will have a strict 8 minutes, but the 5 minutes slightly flexible. We could go to 6, and we're not going to cut off questions unless they're trailing too long. Phase 5, post-competition. So after your presentation, if your team is not moving on to the next round, then you will not be presenting again. You leave and that's it. There's nothing else for you to do. You're done the competition. After that presentation, the only thing that will be left is your team will get feedback forms by email a few days after the presentations. That's it. Next, challenge. So after the orientation tomorrow at about noon, I will put the challenge right here. Right, you're not going anywhere. The challenge is going to be right here on this page. Right, so come back to the rulebook and you can see it here. Section 5.0, this is evaluation. All right. Well, actually, before I get into this, I actually missed something. Let me go back and open a link just so you guys can see it. Competition deliverables. These 2 deliverables are going to be submitted on this form. So you will choose a team name here, your team name, and you will submit your proposal, your presentation here, and then you will send it. That's all that entails. All right, back to evaluation. Judging, which is going to be done online tomorrow on Zoom, live, will be updated on this Excel spreadsheet. Now the spreadsheet looks slightly complicated. I don't want you to be freaked out. So listen carefully here. Every single team will present at least once. The team names will be put here sometime later Saturday or early Sunday morning. So you won't know this until a few hours before your, until maybe 20 hours before or 10 hours before your presentation time. I know certain teams have said, given me good reasoning as to why they need to present at a certain time, and I will accommodate for that. Now, if your team, let's say, is here, your team name is A, and you are over here, then you will be in the yellow Zoom. There are 4 different Zoom links running at the same time. See, 12, 12, 12:15, 12 to 12:15. 4 presentations happening at the same time, but they are happening on 4 different Zoom calls. I will put all the links here, so you can just click on the link and head over to that Zoom room. So let's say your team is here. That means you're presenting at 12:45 to 1 in the yellow link. So at 12:35, just come early, be prepared. At 12:35, join the Zoom link. You'll be in the waiting room. You can join the Zoom link because the yellow Zoom link will be right here. You just click on it and you'll go to the yellow room. Try to be there 10 minutes early and just wait in the waiting room until you're called in. If you're late, we can't help you, but if you're early, no one loses anything. All right, so now the concept of moving ahead. After your team has presented, you leave at 1, right? After your time ends, you just leave. But after all the teams present, we need to announce who the winners are to move to the next round. At the latest presentation that happens ends at 2:45 for the first round. After 2:45, everyone is expected, every single team member is expected to join the green Zoom link. This one right here, the green Zoom. In the green Zoom, the top 3 teams in each section will be announced. So if you are second place in the green section, then you will get a chance to move on to the next round. You just have to be top 3 in your section. We won't announce first place, second place, third place. We will just say these 3 teams are the top 3 teams. Those 3 teams will move on to round 2. So that will be announced within this time, and then the next presentation will continue at 3. In round 2, there will only be 12 teams because there are 4 sections, and the top 3 from each section will move on to the next. 3 times 4 is 12, so there will be 12 teams. Those 12 teams will be randomly split between 2 sections, either the green room or the yellow room. Again, you just use these links to navigate to access those rooms. You will show up at only your presentation time. We may allow people to stay and watch other teams' presentations, but that's not guaranteed. So show up at your presentation time. So between 3 to 5 will be the judging for the next 12 teams. From those 12 teams, only 6 will move on. So half of you, 3 from the green section, 3 from the yellow section, will move on to the next round. Where will that be announced? Since the last presentation is at 5 p.m., that will be announced between 5 and 5:15. Where? In the green Zoom link again. So everyone splits up for the judging, but converges to the green Zoom link at specific times for the announcement of who will proceed to the next round. Okay? So you're all splitting into different rooms, but converging back to green. Don't get lost online. Okay? If you have any questions at any point, you can always just use Discord. Now, let's say these 12 judgings are over, and all the teams come back at 5. All these 12 teams at least come back into the green Zoom link at 5 to discuss which teams will proceed to round 3. For round 3, the top 3 in the yellow will go to top 3 in green and present there. The top 3 teams in green will go to yellow and present there. This is so you can swap judges. And then what ends up happening is that the top 3 teams here and the top 3 teams here have presented to all of the judges, both in the green and the yellow section. And at that point, the competition will be over. So at 6:20, the competition is over in terms of judging. There's no more judging to do. The last thing that happens is that we all convert again to the green Zoom link. Here, we will announce who the winners are, who the top 3 are from these 6 teams. And that will be done by rubric. So announcing which team proceeds to the next round will always be done by rubric. It's not based on just arbitrary decisions by the judges. It's done by a numerical score on the rubric. Who will be your judges? You won't know. You will only know when you join the call and start your judging, start your presentation. You will know who the judges are because you'll see them. All right, so that concludes this spreadsheet. Back to the rulebook. Now that I've shown you the judging, delivery. Delivery is a basic presentation. The aspect of the visual display, I've given you 4 options here. You can have other options. If you are choosing to use a 3D modeling software, you can open that software directly. But of course, you need evidence in your presentation that shows you haven't edited your 3D model after 6 p.m. You can have a short 1-minute video, but that video must be submitted by email before 6 p.m. because again, you might have worked on it beyond that time. Create a design with material at home. You can also make it with stuff you have at home and just show it, but you also need to include a picture of that in your presentation, just so we know that you completed it before 6 p.m. Create detailed sketch blueprints. Yeah, you would just put that, that would just be sketches, that would just be pictures in your presentation. So you don't need really a timestamp for that. All right, we'll move on to the rubric now. Last section of this is the last section. The rubric is probably the most important thing you want to focus on while you are creating your solution because you want to maximize the score you will get. These are the criteria. There's 2 sections, 80% for your actual solution, 20% for your presentation, and then there's penalties too. We'll go through this a bit thoroughly. Problem searching. Thorough research is put in defining a specific problem. The problem statement we're giving you is quite broad. You're going to narrow it down to a very specific problem for specific people, for specific situations. You want it to be very precise. Don't just make a general solution, say, hey, it works for everything. That's not how things usually work. Problem exists in the world today. The problem you decide to design a solution for needs to exist, of course. It can't just be a theoretical thing that you decided. If a Star Wars was real, then we could have these things that would protect us from the lightsabers now. None of that. It needs to be not prevalent, it could be an uncommon problem, but it needs to exist in the world today. Constraints are satisfied. So when the challenge is released, you will see a few constraints. Those constraints must be met. If you don't, you lose points. Design feasibility. Is the solution you made physically possible? We're not talking about politics or environmental feasibility or like if it's possible within a budget. That's not what we're talking about. Is it physically possible? If it was created, no matter how expensive or irrational it was, would it work? That's what this section is about. Sufficient detail is provided for the functionality of the solution. In your presentation, you need to talk about how this object works. Maybe talk about forces. Maybe talk about how it moves or how it would operate. Talk about the physics and the movement of the solution in decent detail. Is the solution plausible? Is it implementable in its context? Whatever your context is, whatever scenario you decide to choose in your problem statement, the solution needs to work for that. Right? You can't have it so that it's like, wait, that makes no sense. You can't use that solution because this. There can't be any reason like that. Visual design. Team presents a detailed visual of design solution. See how much that is worth? 20 points. That's worth a whole 1/5. The visual design you create must be something professional and conveys the message. Okay, that's worth 25 right there, a whole 1/4 of your total score. Sustainability and cost. Obviously, the design you create, if it's made out of diamond, might not be the best idea. Detailed budget required for design. In your solution, you need to include how much that certain thing costs, and relative to what benefit it provides, you will be given a score. If you decide to create something that costs millions of dollars and prevents people from getting a small scratch, then that's not exactly a good budget for a design. Social consideration. Is the project expected to be accepted by the public? You could create a solution that is just nasty, right? You might create a solution that just people would just be like, that's disgusting. I would never use that. So this section of the rubric addresses that. Risk analysis. Have all the negative aspects of the solution considered. When you create your design, there will also be faults. There will always be certain things that have holes, certain holes in your solution, right? What about this happening? What about that happening? You need to consider those and address those before the judges poke at your solution and say, hey, that doesn't work, this doesn't work. Address those holes yourself before the judges mention it. Proposal. This is the little summary that you're going to give to the judges so that they can read before your presentation starts. Presentation, professionalism. adequately prepared, you're doing things well. It's divided evenly, and we know like each of your members did a certain amount of work. You use presentation slides effectively. You complete your presentation within your allotted time, and a presentation of your ideas. Wait a second. Team using presentation slides effectively to convey ideas. Presentation is easy to understand. No, yeah, those are different because this one is asking specifically that the presentation slides are used effectively. This one is just saying the way you structure the presentation is easy to understand. So those are two different things. Penalties, plagiarism, elimination, woo. Competitors display 3D models that are not included in their submissions. I think I can expand that to saying visuals. If you put something that is not in your presentation, if you include that in your actual presentation, because we have no way of verifying that you worked on it past 6 p.m., then you lose a straight minus 50. Design is based off an impossible concept. Yeah, your physics is through the roof. Yeah, that doesn't count, minus 50. Design makes no attempt to solve the problem within constraints. We will give you constraints on the challenge. You choose to ignore those, well, that's a solid 50, minus 50 for you there. Incorrect citations format. Go to technical details, or maybe it's competitor deliverables. You'll see the correct way to do citations there. It's APA format. You don't do it properly, that's a minus 10. You don't use research, you just go off gut feeling. Well, that's a minus 30 for your team. Documents received after deadline, minus 50. Absent team members, your team members should be present. Of course, if you have a very, very valid reason, then we won't penalize you for that. But generally, if your team member just ditches your team, that's a minus 25. All right, so we've gone over the whole rulebook. I've also mentioned the little video that we have, which explains how to use SketchUp. I think this covers most of what you need to know. Anything else you will find out at the orientation tomorrow, so prepare your questions for then. And I hope you guys have a good experience in this competition. We are trying to make it as enjoyable as possible. Good luck to you guys. For some of you, this is your first university experience in a competition. And I hope you have a good time and learn something from it, something that makes you come back and look at this as time well spent. All right, that's enough. That's all from me, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Good luck.